What? You said what?
Welcome to the Real Deals Podcast, the consistently #1 real estate investing podcast on iTunes. This is the place to be in order to transform yourself from a hopeful investor to a highly skilled deal finder. Now, without further ado, let's get into the show.
Rise and shine, make you wanna say, dear God, let me thank you for another day. Been living life on the edge and I'm trying to break it. Tired of ducking the feds, but it's a struggle to make it. So this is your day, homie, now it's time to shine. Pay for players only cheap and we can wine and dine. Stress free from the drama, better get your ticket. Then come on, cause the squares can't lie to kick it.
What is up, everybody out there in listener land? This is episode 216 of the Real Deals Podcast. And of course, as always, I am your host, Tucker Merritt. I want to thank you guys for joining me for what will be an absolutely stellar episode of RDP. I know you guys are going to dig it. Now, before we get into what this episode has in store for you, I want to remind you to check out last week's show with Ray Gonzalez. Great guy, great interview, lots of energy. I really enjoyed that show, so I strongly suggest you guys check it out if you have not already. And more importantly, he's been a long-time listener of the show, so it was really cool to have him on as a guest. Now, this week's show, drum roll, we have a great guest for you. It's a guy that, very busy gentleman. He's got a lot going on, as you could probably imagine once I tell you who it is. Or if you read the, show notes as far as who's on the show before you download the episode, or listen to the episode, I should say, once you downloaded it. But he's a very busy guy. He's got a lot going on. And, sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease in life. And I was as persistent as I needed to be in order to finally clear some time in his schedule and get him on the show. So this week, we are having none other than Mr. Carrot himself, Trevor Mauch, and he is going to pull back the curtain on what's going on over there at Carrot. We're going to talk about his entrepreneurial journey, and we're going to talk about a lot of really cool stuff when it comes to just online marketing in general and what you guys can do to better your online marketing and better your online lead flow. So great guy, and it's going to be an absolutely amazing show. I know you guys are going to get a ton of value out of it. Now, before we get into all of that, a few things that I want to talk about, as I always do. First thing is going to be housekeeping items. Number one, our Driving for Dollars app. The subscription model for both the iPhone and the Android version is complete. So now all you have to do is go in, download the app. It's free to download. You get a 5-property free trial. But at that point, you basically sign up for a $19.99 a month subscription model, and at that point you can pull as much data and build as big a list as you want each and every month. And of course, you can have multiple people on your team as well. So if you have one company and you have a lot of people creating lists for you, if you've got guys driving in the field, guess what? You only need one account. So a lot of really cool stuff on there. And as I've said before, you get the owner's information in terms of who owns it, where they live. You get all their mortgage information, so you know approximately what they owe. And then you also get the previous sale date, so you know how likely they would be to potentially sell if they bought it last year. And it's pretty heavily mortgaged. Chances are you're not going to be able to get a very big discount on it, if any. And they're probably not that interested in selling, honestly. But you get that information. And then last but not least, a very important piece, you get their phone number. And you can do all kinds of things with that when it comes to marketing to really stand out above and beyond the competition. And we're doing a few other things. We're going to be pulling some other data in as well that's really cool. Additional things that you can use to market people also. So that's on the horizon. But right now, for $19.99 a month, you can build as big of lists and as many lists as you want for your entire team. And it's a tremendous value. And at this point, that subscription model is available for both the iPhone and the Android phone. So it's been a long road to get here. I'm super happy that we got here, that's for sure. Technology, especially SaaS businesses, they are definitely a business. It's not just like a little side gig. It's something that Dan works on every single day, both in terms of managing our developer, troubleshooting issues, dealing with support, all those types of things. So if anybody thinks you're just going to build an app and kind of make money in your spare time, got some bad news for you. It takes a little bit more than your spare time, and it takes a little bit more than your spare change to get it built. But we've made it here, so you guys can reap the benefits. So go check it out and download it in the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store, depending on whether or not you have an iPhone or an Android phone. Now, last thing I want to mention about that, we shot a really cool promotional video this week. You guys will probably see it next week, that we're going to use to kind of help push the app's visibility out there in the online world. I broke the RS7 out, and we went driving around, did some cool stuff. I even gave you a little Dazed and Confused line in it. So I'll leave it there, but make sure you guys check out that video once Dan gets it out into the world of online marketing. A couple of things I want to mention. Number one is We've had a lot of new people coming into our DFA and our DFA Launchpad mastermind groups. We've basically set it up so that the DFA is essentially for kind of the higher level people who have a more established business that want to have direct access to me and my entire team every day, but also have direct access to 123 other very high level investors from across the country. And then of course we get together once a year, and this year we're going to be getting together, formally once a year for the DFA Mastermind Meetup. We're going to be getting together this August, and it's something that we make available to everybody who is a part of the community. But if you're interested in taking your business to the next level, you're interested in having a direct line of communication with me and my entire team, and of course all the other amazing investors from across the country who are doing some absolutely mind-blowing things in different niches of real estate, reach out to us about joining our Deal Finders Academy. And if you're a little newer to the game, or you just want to get some competitive advantages in terms of direct mail and other marketing things, and just want to also have a direct line of communication between me and my team, you can join our DFA Launchpad community as well, both of which are tremendous value, and they're really vibrant and growing communities, and we've got a lot of great people in both. So make sure you reach out to us, and at that point you can talk with Dan, and he'll kind of have a conversation with you, and we'll kind of figure out which one would be best for you given your situation and given how many members we have or don't have in any given market, and we can kind of go from there. But we look forward to hearing from many more of you. Dan's been very busy on the phones over the last few weeks talking to a bunch of new members or people that are interested in joining, and we'd like to keep it that way. We want to keep growing these communities, and we want to make them better and better for not only us but for everybody that's a part of them, and really try and help everybody make more and more money as we head into the second part of 2018. Now, the last housekeeping announcement I wanted to make is I will be back up in the Seattle area. I know we have a lot of listeners from the Seattle area to the show, which was very evident when I went up and did the conference up there this past month. But I'm going to be back up there. My buddy Tarl, who runs the Fixated Real Estate Meetup Group, he's asked me to speak at the June 20th, I believe, meeting or gathering. And so I'm going to be the guy up there talking. We're going to talk all about direct seller marketing, and we'll probably talk a lot about, infill redevelopment as well. I think that would be a cool topic to kind of pair with it, because that's where the big money is, folks. So anyway, bottom line is I'll be up there the night of June 20th, if that is the meeting date, which I'm pretty sure that it is. And I'll be there all evening, and we'll be talking to the group, hanging out, and, chit-chatting with everybody after the fact, and they're just putting in a lot of FaceTime up there. So if you guys are going to be at the meeting, or you have any interest in hearing me speak not only about direct seller marketing, but also probably a lot of infill redevelopment and opportunities within that, I will be there, and that's what we're going to present on. Now, before we get into the rest of the show, as always, I want to go through what's been going on with me and TTM over the course of the past week. It's been an interesting week. Last night was quite a doozy. I had a neighborhood meeting that I had to attend for redevelopment. So for those of you guys that do new construction, you cut down trees, you do lot partitions, things like that, generally lot partitions and redevelopment is where this is required. In most cities or metropolitans, you have to do a neighborhood meeting, which basically means before you submit, or part of the process of submitting to the city for a lot partition or some form of redevelopment, you have to put together a meeting for the neighborhood. You have to mail everybody within a certain number of feet of the property. You have to let them know that you're going to be hosting a meeting, and they can basically come there and voice all their concerns, or in other words, bitch and moan about what it is that you're going to do. Not sure why the city allows or sets this up, because really all it does is it just allows people to think that their opinion actually matters, when in reality it doesn't. The only thing that matters is zoning and what the overall plan for the city looks like and how the planners for the city interpret that. That's really all that matters when you're doing redevelopment. The neighbor's opinion of what your lot looks like, or the type of house that you're going to build there, or how close you build to the property line, their opinions on that mean nothing. But when you have to go to these meetings, it basically empowers them to think that their opinion actually does mean something. And last night was no exception. It was an hour and a half of pretty rapid fire, pretty classic situation. I mean, anytime, there's a lot of parts of town, and probably for a lot of you guys listening, where a lot of redevelopments occurred. Housing is becoming much denser, so basically bigger lots are being partitioned into smaller lots, and more housing is being created because people want to live within the cities, right? And so there's a part of Portland, just south of Portland, in between Portland and Lake Oswego, where we're doing a project, and it's probably the last part of town to kind of get on the density train. There hasn't been a whole lot of partitioning going on there because there's a lot of bigger stately type homes there, and a lot of bigger lots, but there is many areas where the zoning allows for higher density. And so we own a big piece of property. It's about 1.33 acres, where we're splitting it into two. And so it was a pretty typical situation where there, pretty typical complaints. People thought that the lots looked too small, even though, each lot is 90 feet wide, which for any of you guys that do infill redevelopment, typical infill in the city is about a 50-foot wide lot for single families. So these are almost twice that. And they were saying, oh my God, those lots look way too narrow, which is insane. A 90-foot wide lot is plenty wide for a very normal looking plan. They're even saying, oh my God, with those 90-foot wide lots, they're going to be like attached townhomes that you're building there that won't fit into the neighborhood at all. And I had to gently explain to them that if you have 90-foot wide lots, no way in hell are you doing attached townhomes, and no way in hell does it even look like attached townhomes. But that was one of the complaints. The other, of course, is inevitably the trees that have to be cut, the traffic that's going to be added, the fact that they're going to be looking at houses and not open space now, which basically, people forget that their house had to be built at one point too, right? And at one point, where their house sits was open space also, and people looked at that. But how quickly we forget, right? And how quickly people forget it. Portland is full of, there's an acronym called NIMBYs, right? Not in my yard or not in my backyard. There's a whole bunch of those types of people here in Portland. And the meeting last night had a bunch of those. And so you have to kind of put your kitty gloves on and deal with them gently and let them talk. As much as you want to kind of combat everything that they say, you have to just kind of let them talk and say, yes, I understand your concerns, and kind of massage the situation. And so that was last night, but they came at me pretty hot and heavy on a lot of topics, and I was basically in the hot seat for an hour and a half. So for those of you guys that are doing partitions and redevelopment, or you're on your way to doing it, guess what? That's what you have to look forward to. Now, of course, you can hire a land planner to help with that, but if you send them in there without any sort of representative for your company, you're basically sending them, unarmed to a gunfight. So you want to make sure that you at least give them a little backup, and so I was nice enough to go with our gal last night. But anyway, that's what's going on in terms of that. There's also a big change, and I know this is happening up in Seattle as well. It's finally being proposed for Portland, where they're looking to change the zoning in a lot of neighborhoods to allow for more duplexes and triplexes to be built. And in exchange for that, they're also limiting the size of any new single-family home that you can build to 2,500 square feet. So any normal size 5,000 square foot lot or larger, the maximum home size that they will allow you to build, which seems very big brotherish. This just does not seem right, but this is Portland, and Seattle's actually worse in a lot of ways. But they're trying to limit the size of home that you can build. Now, they already limit the footprint in which you can build, right? And then you have a height restriction, and so you can usually fit square footage within the size of the footprint and the height that you can build up to. But now they want to maximize or put a maximum on the square footage that you can build. So even though you can go up to a certain height and you can still build within a certain footprint, you can't make the home bigger than 2,500 square feet, which is insane, but that's their way of fighting quote-unquote McMansions, which a 2,700 square foot house is far from a McMansion, but that's what everybody wants to say these days. So it sticks, and it garners political support. So anyway, they're capping what it is that we can build in terms of square footage for new single-family homes, but in return, they are trying to allow for zoning changes so that we can build duplexes and triplexes in a lot of these closer-in neighborhoods, which basically creates more housing units in a city where we're desperately in need of more inventory, not only for people to buy, but also for people to rent and live in at somewhat of an affordable price. And so that would make sense. It's a smart move in the right direction. Problem is, we have so many NIMBYs that are basically down at City Hall the last few days because this has been going under vote and just kind of observation by City Council. You have had a massive lineup of people that are saying, you're going to ruin our city, and I can't believe you're doing this. So on one end, people want affordable housing. On the other end, they don't want any sort of additional housing units created. So what does that happen? What happens when that's the case, right? Well, you get a stalemate, and at that point, you basically have housing that becomes more and more unaffordable, and you have very few new units actually making it to the market. So once people get their home to live in, they don't seem to care about the fact that anybody else should be able to get a home at a reasonable price as well, which pretty classic Portland. That's keeping it weird, right? So anyway, that's what's going on with Portland. It's an interesting thing, but a lot of cities are kind of going through this metamorphosis right now where, they're trying to rezone certain areas, maybe that are close to light rail, things like that, so that you can put in new and more housing units, which if that's the case, there's a big opportunity there for you as a real estate investor and also as a real estate developer if you continue climbing the real estate ladder. Now, a couple of the things I want to talk about. Number one is yesterday we had a doozy of a seller appointment. Let me tell you, we had this guy We showed up to the property, and there were multiple signs in the windows that said, no trespassing, and there was another one that said, no trespassing, any survivors will be ... and there were a bunch of dogs barking, a big punching bag hanging out front, and just a whole bunch of really strange and odd characters throughout the house, which we found to be awfully strange. We were walking through the house after we got let in, and it was very dark and dingy and just really strange. But the funniest thing was the guy who we were meeting with. It was a house that had gone to an auction date had been posted, and then it had been removed from auction. But anytime something goes to the auction block, you've got people hounding that seller like crazy. So we actually showed up, and the guy was on the phone by somebody who had cold called him. At the same time, he was trying to get off the phone with him, and the guy wouldn't let him off the phone. But the guy who cold called didn't realize that there was an attorney involved, and he can't really get the guy to commit to doing business with him over the phone because there's an attorney running interference that's going through any offers, and he failed to ask those questions. So it was kind of like watching this slow motion car wreck as we're just standing there trying to listen to him get him off the phone, but at the same time listening to the cold caller, who's also a real estate investor, trying to hard sell him into doing business with him. But anyway, that aside, after we got a tour from this guy, it was just an absolute horrible house that he was, for whatever reason, so proud of. He was renting out each room. They actually had a furnace because it had been quasi remodeled in the house, but the furnace was sitting in the living room, right? Which was extremely odd. The house hadn't been cleaned in probably 3 or 4 decades, and there was nothing salvageable about it. But the one thing he said is that before we left, he said he doesn't want to sell to anybody who's going to knock it down, because this is a really amazing house, and his grandfather built it, and he wants to make sure that it stays. And I'm sitting there scratching my head going, what could this guy possibly see in this house to make him think that it's worth keeping? And especially given how little he seems to care about, keeping it up and doing any sort of maintenance, or hell, just cleaning up the 8,000 cigarette butts that were sitting all over the front porch, right? But hey, welcome to Portland, people. So anyway, I wish we had a little video kind of carry along. We should have shot some undercover video of this appointment, because you guys definitely would have liked it. But for those of you that are familiar with Portland, it was in the Milwaukee area, and Milwaukee has some interesting folks that are in it, as do most parts of town around here. But this guy, or this we called it the circus after we left. It was a lot of interesting carny looking folks that were renting out rooms, and this was a really interesting guy as well that gave us a tour. But anyway, that was the highlight new lead that came in this week of properties that we went and looked at. Thought you guys might want to hear about it. And then last but not least, we have a very cool new service that we are integrating with all of the lists that we build through our Driving for Dollars app, that actually does slide dial and text blasting together, and you can easily monitor it and schedule it, and then also reply to people via your desktop. So basically our office manager here, Chris, throughout the day, not only can he take the calls that come in, but he can also respond to the text messages via his desktop from this system. So we basically send out our mail, we do our slide dialing, and then from there we also are able to send out our text blasts at the same time, and he can respond to all those things right there at his desk. So he can kind of sit in the chair and respond to all the marketing, which is really cool. So anyway, we'll work on getting this individual or this company probably on the show at some point here, so that you guys can hear a little bit more about what they do. But we're giving it a real solid run through right now, and we're looking to eventually even link it up with our Driving for Dollars app. So that's pretty much the lead into this week's show. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, Real Deals podcast listeners, I want to talk quickly about our show's sponsor, Iron Bridge Lending. If you guys have not reached out to Iron Bridge already to talk to them about funding some of your upcoming flip projects, I highly encourage you to do so. I've known the owner of Iron Bridge for a very long time. I personally borrowed millions of dollars from them over the years to do a number of different projects, and I can say without a doubt, they are the best hard money lending company I have ever come across, and that is the reason why they are the sole sponsor of this show. I've had a lot of other companies reach out to me and want to sponsor this show, but I just won't do it. I feel like I need to be genuine in who we have sponsoring the show, and it needs to be somebody that I've personally done a ton of business with. So I personally vouch for their ability to be the best, hands down, in the world of hard money lending. You won't find better programs, you won't find better terms, and they're lending or will be lending in over 20 states. So chances are, if you're hearing this in whatever state you're in, it's definitely worth it to check out their website, reach out to them, see if they're lending in your state, and if they are, I would absolutely encourage you to do business with them. Another very cool thing to note is that they have a program for most rehabs where you can actually borrow up to 90% of the purchase price. Now, this is given the fact that you are actually buying a deal, which if you're listening to the show, that means you probably are. But if you have an actual deal on the table, they'll fund up to 90% of your purchase price, and they'll even give you rehab funds on top of that, which means that it only takes 10% down to get into a project, which is unbelievable in the hard money world. So do yourself a favor, reach out to Iron Bridge Lending, have a conversation with them, see if they're a good fit for you and for your next project. I can guarantee you that you'll be happy that you did. All right, everybody out there in listener land, I've got an amazing interview for you this week. I have a gentleman that I'll give you his credentials first, right, and how we're connected. Number one, he's the CEO of Carrot. Number two is he's the host of Carrot Cast. Number three, and probably the most important, he's also an Oregonian. And number four, we actually have the same initials, at least the first and last name, which is, I guess, a first for a guest on this show. But without further ado, I want to welcome Trevor Mauch to the show. Trevor, thanks for jumping on and doing this with me.
Tucker, man, I appreciate it. It's funny, the initial thing. I remember when I was a kid, I'd look at all the labels on things, and they always had the TM on them. One of my friends' dads told me that was for me.
And you probably believed it. What's funny is I actually looked at the same thing. I didn't realize it meant trademark back then, but you figure these things out as you get older, I guess.
That's funny.
And last but not least, we also have a number of people within our DFA Mastermind group who are also Carrot customers and obviously have had quite a bit of correspondence with you over the years. So I'm sure many of them are happy that you're on the show as well. So without further ado, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. We appreciate the heck out of it, dude.
So, a lot of times when we talk about stuff on the show, it's kind of granular techniques, things like that in order to generate deals, which I want to get into some of that because I think it's important. But I like to talk about, kind of entrepreneur to entrepreneur type stuff. And you've got a really interesting business, and we have a tech side to our business as well. And it can be challenging at times. So I know there's a lot to it. But more importantly, just talking about business and growth and all that stuff, I think is an important part of just, not only real estate investing, but just overall, being successful in life and ultimately building a business that you want to, give you financial freedom and time and whatever it is you're going for. But why don't you start us off and dive into, the journey that ultimately created Carrot? I know you've been an entrepreneur for a long time, but where did this journey start and how did Carrot birth from it?
Yeah, man, it's an awesome question. So, yeah, man, it's kind of funny. So I think as entrepreneurs, a lot of us, we hang our hat on the pride of being a quote unquote serial entrepreneur. We think that being a serial entrepreneur is this amazing thing to hang our hat on, or a person that does a lot of different things. Man, I've got 4 businesses or whatever. And I was that guy. And I've been investing in real estate since I was 21 in college. I'm a buy and hold guy. I've only wholesaled one property in my life. It was a mini storage. I did it on accident. So I'm not a flipper. I'm not a wholesaling guy, but I'm a buy and hold. And bought my first fourplex by the college I went to in Southern Oregon, Oregon Tech, and I've been buying property since then. And so between those years, I started multiple companies. And one thing that I became really passionate about was marketing. I just really, really love marketing. I love that you can take a message, you can take certain things, and you can mold this message around a product, a service, whatever it is, and you can reach people and move people to action. And hopefully, of course, you use marketing for good, right? You hope that you use marketing for good because you can use it for really, really bad things too, to influence. And as we were going, I'm in the real estate space, was meeting a lot of investors. They're like, hey, you know how to generate leads online? Because I had a marketing or a kind of a quote unquote consulting agency up in Portland, actually, at that time. It wasn't an agency, dude. It was me, going out there hustling for stuff. And I was learning online marketing really well. So I started to drive leads for myself for tenants, started to drive leads for other investors. And I kept on doing that on the side as I was building a publishing company in my own small portfolio. And it was 2012 when I was honestly burnt out. We can talk more about some of that stuff later, how do you actually structure a business so it's your fuel for your passion and some other things. But I got burnt out with my previous company in 2012 when I was trying to figure out what do I do next. And this lead generation thing kept on coming back to me. And I kept on pushing it away. I'm kind of burnt out in the real estate side of things and I'll keep on building portfolio. I just want to do marketing. And I kept on coming back. And then it hit me. I'm like, man, this is a small business issue. this is the past 10 years from 2002 to 2012. At that time, I saw that the whole call to arms for small business was you just got to get online. Easy, fast, get online. That's all you got to do. Wix, Weebly, Squarespace, GoDaddy, your mom and pop web developers, they all popped up during that decade. And in 2012, the people that were coming to me, my buddy who was a contractor in town, or the real estate investors from around the country, were the ones that had websites and that they were a part of the clutter now, and their website wasn't set up to perform. It was there, but it wasn't performing. And so I'm like, man, I think the next decade's all about performance. How do you attract people and then convert them at a high rate into leads, foster that, and close deals? And so that's what we decided to make a gamble in 2013 and say, hey, let's give ourselves a year to focus in on this thing and see if we can grow a business around this. And 2014, it's like, man, this is working. Let's see if we can be the best in the world at this. Like, not just good at it, the best in the world. And that's what we focus on being, and led us into today.
Very cool. I didn't know that you were up in Portland for a while. What spurred the move down to Roseburg from Portland?
Yeah, so I grew up in Klamath Falls. So for context for people that aren't Oregonians, Klamath Falls is way down southern Oregon on the east side of the Cascades, like 20 miles from the California border. And so we went to college there, and then my wife graduated with me at OIT, and her schooling for her master's degree was up in Forest Grove. So we moved up there for her school at Pacific University. And it was during that time that I said, out of college, like, I'm not going to get a job for a year. I'm going to try this entrepreneurship thing. So that's kind of what started that. We moved to Roseburg in 2008 because of her job again. So we've kind of like following her stuff around. And that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur in this digital age, is most of us do business anywhere. You guys could flip houses and stuff in Portland from other places. I was talking with a client literally in Minnesota last week who's buying and selling homes in Portland right now. So we moved down here from Portland in 2008 and chased her job, and that's when I really dug in and honed my entrepreneurship chops.
Very cool. Yeah, I had no idea that you had some time in Portland, which is definitely interesting. So on this journey, 2013, it sounds like. So that was when you kind of said, "Hey, let's take a run at this Carrot thing." Or at that point, was it called Carrot, or is that what it initially was, or did it morph into that?
No, it's funny, man, because for probably a year or two before that, with my previous company, I was working with real estate investors again and doing something different. But they kept on coming to me saying, like, "Hey, where should I go get my website built?" And I'm like, nowhere. They're all terrible. Like, don't go to your local web developer, because they're going to build you something pretty, but it's not going to convert. And I would try to tell them what to do. And then, the web options at that time were really bad. It was kind of like, you go there and choose from 100 different design options, but none of them were tested. None of them were proven to convert. And so what we did was, reluctantly, I had my web guy. I'm like, dude, can you just I drew it on a piece of paper. I'm like, can you just make a WordPress template that looks like this, please? And then he gave it to me. We tweaked it up, and I literally gave those files to clients from about 2010 through 12. And then they had a tough time with it. And then I'm like, okay, I'll just set it up on my HostGator reseller account and just pay me like $10 a month. And I learned that's the worst business model in the world ever. And so at that time, literally, it was called REI Theme, like a WordPress theme for real estate. And I had about 50 people, 100 people, I don't remember exactly what it was, in some way, shape, or form, were on my server. Some were paying $10 a month, some weren't, but I didn't take them off. Some paid me $50 one time. It was a nightmare. And so around that time, when I was trying to figure out what to do during my transition, when I hit this phase as an entrepreneur where, everyone is looking at you, your friends, family, look at you from the outside, and they're like, man, that guy's got it made. That gal's got it made. He can work from anywhere. He's making low six figures as a guy in his mid-20s. He can sleep in, like all this stuff, right? I was miserable, dude. I was miserable. I didn't want to wake up to do the work that I had created in my job. And that's a whole nother discussion we can touch on more, on how I came out of that. It is a process. And every time I get into that phase now, I go through my process and I get out of it really fast now. But it was around that time when I was like, what am I going to do next? I sold all of my other companies except for one, my consulting business. That sounds fancy. That was mainly getting away from them. Like, I just needed mind space and I needed to declutter. And then I still had these websites sitting there. I had like 50 or 100 people paying me. And I'm like, it's a pain in the butt. I'm either just going to get rid of it. I don't even know if I've ever told this story before. Dude, I think you're like the first one on a podcast I've ever told this part of the story to. So we had like 50 to 100 people on this old HostGator server. And I had to make the decision. I'm like, I'm either just going to cut it off and tell them I'm sorry, but take the files and go move them somewhere else. Or I dug in with that idea, that epiphany that I had on small business in general. Previous decade was get online, now it's performance. I'm like, is there something here? And that's where I decided, you know what? I think investors, there's a big space there where no one's focusing on performance. I think we can do it. So it changed from REI theme to Carrot. Officially, it was May of 2014, actually.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, you guys have had a pretty meteoric rise since then, really. I mean, you filled a void in the market that you obviously saw but hadn't fully tested, but you thought it was there. In hindsight being 2020, it was there, obviously. What do you think, just from one entrepreneur to another, what do you think was the biggest driver in kind of taking you to that low point? Because I like to talk about the low points on the entrepreneurial journey as well. Was it focusing or not focusing, but having to fill your day with shit that you don't want to do and focus on? It just became too much. Was that the main driver in kind of getting you to that point where you wanted out, essentially?
Dude, yeah, that's one of them for sure. So it's funny. It's probably like a year ago, 8 months ago, I was at a park with some friends, and we were sitting there like barbecuing some burgers and stuff like that. It was dusk in the middle of Oregon summers, which are like the best ever. And so my friend, he's a real estate investor, but also works at our church. And he asked that question, right? Anyone that looks successful from the outside, someone always like, what's the one thing? What's the one thing that you can attribute your success to? And we sat there for probably an hour and a half talking about not one, but 8 things that I discovered. I'd never really thought about that question. And I'm going to answer your question here in a second. I'm like, okay, it wasn't one thing, but it was a series of one things. In this phase of my life, there was one thing I had to do to get to the next phase. In this phase, it was one thing. In this phase, it was one thing. So in that phase where I was, let's say when we moved here to Roseburg, that's where my publishing company, my consulting company started to do really well. Okay, so I was making money. People were paying me really well for things that I was doing, and I was pretty good at them. The problem was those things, I was tricked into thinking that those were my unique ability because people would pay me a lot of money to do them. And that's one of the worst pieces of advice I've ever heard is someone said, your unique ability, the things you should be focusing on, are the things that other people say you're amazing at, and they'll pay you a lot of money to do that. And I did that. The problem was they drained my energy. So I kept on taking on more of that stuff. I kept on taking on more execution of marketing instead of strategizing and doing calls like this. And execution drains my energy. I love thinking of ideas. I love strategizing. I'm going to lay out the strategy, then I'm out of here. Like, I'm going to ruin the execution of it. And that's why we have a big team now. But at that time, I was all day waking up, executing, a little bit of strategy, executing some more. Another thing I love, and I didn't know I loved it at the time, but I love coaching. I love doing things like this that I'm passionate about. I don't charge for coaching. I don't do coaching for a living. I just love doing it. Mentoring local people, doing these podcasts, coaching our team. And I wasn't doing any of it. I was the guy behind the scenes in the business. Someone else was in the front. So that was the big part, man. There was this one thing, there was a moment that did cause me to reflect and actually put urgency to it, though. And this is something I want everyone to really listen to this, because it's really easy when you're young, old, doesn't matter. Like, it's really easy to think we have unlimited days here in that moment, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna be here for a while. I'm 25. I've got tons of years. Like, it doesn't matter. No urgency in the moment. And I was one of my brother's best friends. He's my older brother by 3 years. One of his best friends on a Sunday was literally like doing gardening. He has 3 kids, and they were talking about retirement. And he was in his early 30s, maybe late 20s. And while they're talking about retirement, man, he didn't know that he wasn't going to be there for dinner that night. He had a brain aneurysm and died on the spot. And I'm sitting there going, man, Nick, I remember growing up with him and one of my brother's best friends in his wedding. And this is in a moment where I had a kid, one on the way. And I'm just going, man, like, that's me. That's me in a few years. I have 3 kids now. And I said, if Nick doesn't have the time to really go live his retirement, his kids don't have the time with their dad anymore, look at me wasting all this. I changed the mindset. Like, I'm wasting Nick's time, not mine. And that's what I started doing. Like, every second I waste doing something I'm not passionate about, doing something that I'm not fired up to do, is wasting Nick's time and wasting my family's time. Crap, my time, I'm wasting theirs. And so that created some urgency for me. And that's kind of where I started to recognize a big part of why I was, I was miserable. I was doing work, like you said, that I wasn't fired up about. It didn't give me energy. I was great at it. And I'll leave this one thing, then I'll shut up because I can talk about this stuff all day long, is the trap that I had, and I created this thing about a year or two after that called the energy audit. And I've been working on it with my team on it. I do it every quarter, and it's changed my life. Is during that time, dude, what happened was I had all these things I was currently doing that made me money. But I had all these other things that I'm like, I really love those things though, but I don't know how I can make money on those right now. Strategizing, hopping on calls like this, podcast coaching, just doing strategy, no execution. I'm like, if I don't do execution, how are we going to make money? So I had this gap between what gave me energy, and I could be world class on it if I put the energy into it. But it gave me when I was done doing the things versus the things that zapped my energy that made me money. I'm like, how do I span the gap? How do I start to pull these things away that drain my energy but make me money? Still have money coming in, but invest more time into these things that give me energy and give me life. And it was during that 2 years that I went through a process that now I call the energy audit, and a couple other things that completely changed my life.
Yeah, I think it's a big topic, obviously, but I think it's an important one because we as entrepreneurs and myself as well, I mean, I get stuck in a lot of execution tasks that I hate, but it's
Yep.
to some extent it's the nature of the beast. I try and limit it, but I do recognize that as I am overwhelmed with those types of tasks, those days are exponentially shittier than the days that I'm spending my time doing what I feel gives me the most energy back, which, again, is stuff like this, strategizing, coming up with new ways, new marketing campaigns, new parts of town, types of projects we're going to go after, things like that are to get me excited, right? Versus, let's say, for example, last night, I had to go to a redevelopment meeting for the Dunthorpe neighborhood, which I don't know if you remember what Dunthorpe is, but there's a lot of hoity-toity, name-dropping type folks there, and I basically sat there for an hour and a half and got rapid-fired by a bunch of people that know nothing about redevelopment but have very large opinions that they think everybody should listen to. So that was a energy-sucking moment, but then I come back in a day like today, and these are energy-adding moments. So I try and balance it, but I think it's a good topic, and it's something people should try and recognize in their business. But kind of segueing here and moving forward, it sounds like you took an audit of that, you recognized what gives you the most energy, and then that was, in essence, the birth of Carrot and what it's become today, right?
Yeah, but basically what I had done is I looked at what was I doing in my previous companies I was unhappy with, and I created what I call my 5 non-negotiables at that time. I hadn't learned it from anyone. I had literally just sat down and like, I love business and entrepreneurship, but doing it the wrong way can trap you just as fast, if not faster, than being an employee. And so I'm like, what do I need to do to guarantee I'm not going to get trapped in my business next time, and to guarantee that it's fun, it gives me energy, and I'm making an impact. That was my big things. My previous companies, I was doing good work. We had like a great small team and great products, but I don't think we were making this big impact. And so my 5 non-negotiables, I wrote them down, and I go, okay, whatever business it is, this is before I even decided to do Carrot, whatever business it is, has to match all 5 of these. Otherwise, I'm going to shift it as soon as I recognize it, or I'm going to exit the business in some way. And it's got to match all 5. And so that was really that nexus, is going, okay, before I had even started Carrot, I knew what it was going to look like as far as like, how is it going to serve me and our community, right? And I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't do is they start a company like I had before with this dream. It could be an income-based dream. It could be whatever it is. Oftentimes for newer entrepreneurs, it's an income and time dream. Income, lifestyle, time. But the thing is, if we don't write down those things that we're unwilling to negotiate during building the business, it's really easy to give an inch. Like as you see more money coming in, well, here's another opportunity. Let me do this. You take it on because there's now the opportunity that you didn't have before. But what if that thing completely goes against one of your non-negotiables? So we've turned down I probably turned down $1 million plus in revenue over the past 3 years just by looking at my non-negotiables going, nope, doesn't match those. I'm not willing to bend it.
I think that's a good point. I turned down one of those last week, and it's a tough decision sometimes to do, but it was a larger multifamily project that would have taken a lot of my energy, and it would have given a lot of negative energy off to get it to the finish line. And so I took it off the table, and I said, you know what? will make money a better way for me personally, versus keeping that on the agenda. So yeah, it's a tough decision sometimes, but as you kind of explained, it's the right decision if you're ultimately trying to build a business that you want to be in every day, doing the things that you as the leader do.
Dude, and that's let me toss one thing in there real quick, and that's one thing too that I want people to make sure that they're looking at is what is your business going to look like in a year, 2, 3 years, right? Because a lot of people, especially if they're getting into house flipping or wholesaling, they look at what they want it to look like in a year. Hey, I want to start making money, but what happens then? Are you creating a job for yourself? Are you actually intentional with creating this thing, which is going to get you to ultimately where you want to be in life? And so many people end up creating a job for themselves, and then they look back, go, oh shoot. Like, I don't like what I'm doing now, and that's what I did before, right? It's like, shoot, I created this thing that sounded amazing. I reached those goals, and now I just have a job, and I don't even like it, and I feel like I'm trapped, and that sucks. And so think 1, 2, 3, 4 years out. It's like if you're going into house flipping and wholesaling, is that the end goal? Hey, that's what I want to do for a living. I want to do that. Or is that going to be your jumping off point? That's going to be the thing that fuels the next thing, and then fuels the next thing.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to think about. I often talk about the real estate ladder, and generally as you get into it, wholesaling is a lot of times is the first rung on the ladder that people get into. It's the most important in a lot of ways too, because the marketing, that's where the marketing comes in, and generating deals in any part of the real estate asset class, being good at marketing is the key to success in those classes. And so it's the most important rung, but it's where people start. And then from there, as you mentioned, you can use it as your jump off point to get to the next rung or do something else, within real estate. It's not, you don't necessarily have to be a wholesaler your whole life. And I mean, we started doing a lot of direct seller marketing and things like that to generate deal flow. And then that is segued into, building multi-million-dollar new construction, doing multifamily projects, things like that. But that's where it started. And so I think that's a great point.
I love it.
So let's, we talked about some of the, the challenges and whatnot. What are some of the high spots? Because you have had quite a meteoric rise, and I know from the outside, things always look more glamorous than the inside. That's just the way it is. But with that being said, you guys have still done some amazing things in a shorter period of time in terms of, grabbing a large amount of market share and really just helping a lot of people become better investors. So what are some of the high spots on your journey so far? Things you really enjoyed?
Yeah, dude, there's a lot of them. So, but like you said, like there is a lot of them. And I share on my podcast a lot of the down part of it too. But dude, high points. This is something I never expected I'd grow to love. Is actually really, really love building a team. So that's one of the biggest high spots for me is my team. And with my previous companies, I'd have some VAs and assistants, maybe an employee or something like that. And I think my father and mother, I love them to death. That even though my dad's like the most positive person in the world, that's where I got a lot of my positivity. The one thing he's negative in is employees. And I grew up with the mindset of like, you can never find good employees. They're always a pain in the butt. One actually stole $100,000 from him. So rightfully so, he's got that thinking. And so that's probably the biggest thing is like, when you do it right, you can grow an amazing crew, just people that are just freaking awesome. And you're all going towards this mission, these core values, and you make an impact. I think the second thing that's just really, really cool and kind of going on in the impact side of things is here locally in Roseburg. We're 3 hours south of you. We've been able to use this business to really fuel the entrepreneur community here. We started the entrepreneur community before Carrot. In about 2010, we moved into the loft, took that over, our co-work space here, 8,000 square feet in downtown Roseburg. We started the Young Entrepreneur Group that same year, but things didn't really start to take off until Carrot came in the scene, because I think it added a new urgency. It added a new thing for people to shoot for that they could do here in Roseburg. No longer was it a couple consulting companies, da-da-da-da. It's this company that attracted an even higher level of ambitious people that are doing amazing things in Roseburg. So that's awesome. Another couple high points are I have finally learned, still need to get better at it, but finally learned how to actually use a business to fuel your life better instead of your life fueling your business. All my stuff before was like, hey, I'm going to work hard growing this thing, and I'm going to save money. And I don't really spend my money. I'm a simple guy. Like, I've got my 2012 GMC pickup still, probably not going to get rid of that until it dies. And I'm a simple guy. But the cool thing is I'm going, okay, how can I have this business add this to my life, and add this to our team members' lives, and add this to our customers' lives? And we built a gym here in the office in October. It's completely changed my life. I couldn't have done that 5 years ago. But we have a trainer that comes in 3 days a week. We have employees that work out. One of our local customers comes and works out. So just like using that business and having the mindset shift to go, okay, I'm not going to take 100% of those profits and put them into my pocket and be a miser with the money and then be the richest person in the cemetery, as they say. I'm going to be smart with it, but I'm also going to take that money and make my life easier and make other people's lives easier around me. Dude, so many things. I guess one last thing I'll toss out there is we have this thing that we call the thread of awesomeness here at Carrot, and we started it probably 3 years ago, where we have over 4,000 active customers right now. So that's something that a lot of people don't know the size of the company. We're pretty decently big now, 20 employees. These are full-time people. That doesn't include any of our contractors we work with, salary full-time employees. And one of the coolest things that we've done for culture and for celebrating our customers is the thread of awesomeness. So our whole team is always out there looking to serve our clients and pull amazing stories out of our clients. Right? So, hey, I got this deal done, this happened, this changed my life, whatever it is. And taking those thread of awesomenesses and putting them on our wall of awesomeness here in the office, like all the amazing stories and how we're changing people's lives, that's something that I would love to inject into every single business in the world. Is how do you intentionally always seek out the amazing stories and help to create those for your customers, not just looking for them, but creating that success, and also changing their mindset around what a business should be, not just a money maker, but a difference maker too. And then injecting into your business culture so your team can be lit on fire with how they're impacting people.
Yeah, I think, well, my biggest takeaway from what you said here is I think your high spot is building the culture that you've built.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you're creating a big impact when you do that, but I think the root of that is building a culture. And that's, for me, it was funny. I spoke at a big conference up in Seattle a few weeks ago, real estate conference, and a guy came up to me after I spoke, and he was asking about whether or not I'd outsource a lot of our stuff to VAs and things like that, which I'm not downplaying that. But I said, well, I don't, because I've invested in a lot of people that, as we were working on this call, I had to dip my head in Dan's office because I'm big on culture too. And, Chris, who's in the office right next to me, he's been with me we're going on 9 years.
That's
Dan's
cool.
going on 6 years. It's become a family business now too. My wife does all of our design and project management, and she's been with me since a builder that she worked for later off in 2008. So it's a very culture-filled business, and I think that ultimately that's one of the things that really allows certain businesses to succeed while others don't, because it kind of pushes you forward on days that are like, kind of days, right? It's not nearly as much of a drag to be around the people that you work with and doing the things that you need to do. And not every day is roses, right? I mean, there's always challenges in entrepreneurship. And so I think that the high spot that I'm taking away from you and mine personally is definitely creating a culture that you want to be around every single day.
Yeah, dude. And one cool thing about that too, it's like one really cool thing about that is when you have a great culture, like every company has a culture. It just depends on whether you've intentionally molded it and created it or not. But when you have a great culture, the funny thing is as an entrepreneur, the first thing we look at, like I said, is you're trying to get your back from against the wall. Like that's the first thing. You're motivated by income and getting going. As soon as you hit your income levels, a funny thing happens. You bump it up and go, okay, now I'll be happy with this. But eventually you hit this point where you're not happy anymore. That's how it was before. The thing that keeps me coming back to work when I'm making more money than even in my life board or whatever I made 7 years ago, I'd even dreamed. We're making a lot of money. I'm not going to be like shy about that. I'm saying like any of you can build an amazing company, but we're making a lot of money because of the way we're doing business. And like I come to work not to make money anymore. I don't need more money. It's to serve this team and to serve our customers. And that pumps me up. So if you're building a business and money is the primary reason for you to get up in the morning to do the activity, eventually you're going to run out of motivation for that. You're going to become miserable unless you wrap your reason for being in your business, serving your team and your customers and making a big difference for them.
Yeah. And I again, great point. I think, but like you said, a lot of people start with their back against the wall. So money is the main focus, right? And
it has to be. Yeah, it was mine, for sure.
And once you get that traction, you can kind of elevate to, making more of a difference. And the funny thing about life and businesses is once you get to that, money becomes much easier to make. But you don't think so, but it's kind of maybe one of those tricks of life that you just don't realize until you get there, But so I've got you for a few more minutes here. I want to get some folks some information specifically about Carrot. I think we talked about some really cool stuff, but what are some things, just for those listeners that are kind of granular on the tech side of things, and I know that's the world that you live in, what are some things that Carrot's doing right now or direction that you're going that you're really excited about in terms of actually helping real estate investors? And also, I know you got agent stuff coming online too, probably a lot of the same type of technical stuff. But what are some of the things you're really excited about right now that you're doing for customers?
Yeah, dude, there's a few things, right? So where we are right now in the real estate investor space, as far as tools go, is we're in this space where it's ballooning and then it's going to contract and consolidate. And I don't know if you guys have seen it over the past 6 months. There's been a new CRM popping up every other month. It seems like, and that's awesome because what's happening is people going, okay, I see a flaw in this. I want to go out there and solve it. I love that. I love that energy. But we're seeing a lot of that come out. All these Podio apps and these different systems popping up and here and there. So it's definitely creating a lot of options for people. But also the one thing that still hasn't been owned yet is the marketing tool of record. What is the marketing tool of record? And I wouldn't even say that Carrot's there yet. We're like amazing on helping you pull in the lead, generate the lead, SEO ranking, conversion. And we have some really great content marketing tools, which we lead the industry in that. But we're still not the marketing tool of record. So that's something we're working on right now is how do we make sure that all of the leads are getting from anywhere in one spot, and that someone doesn't have to go and spend $200-300 a month on a big CRM for all this stuff. And we've got some other things in the content marketing side that we're going to be building in, making it easier for people to do Facebook marketing this year. And we're doing some really cool things, like I said, on the content side, that as we're in a cluttered market, and the problem is, I would love to say, hey, push button, easiest thing in the world, you guys don't have to do any work, and you're just going to crack through that clutter and da-da-da. But the thing is, when we're in a cluttered market, in a high real estate market, everyone and their dog wants to become an investor, and everyone and their dog wants to become an agent because it's easy to make money. So if you are an investor and you have the exact same unique selling proposition as investor B, C, D, and E, as in I can buy houses quickly for cash, and I'm local, it's like you got to have something different that separates you. And that's where we created a diagram called the Inside the Mind of a Motivated Seller. It's the thought process and how a motivated seller makes a decision. It's on our blog. Go to oncarrot.com/blog and look up motivated seller inside the mind or something in the box. And basically the gap that we're in right now that excites me is how do we help our clients during the phase where they're building credibility in the vetting and verifying phase. So a seller knows there's 7 investors and 3 agents that are in their sphere of making a decision that can solve their problem. How do you whittle it down so you are the one or one of the 2 that they look at and choose? It's about content. It's about credibility, getting your case studies, testimonials, things like that, local pictures on your website. And we're just so pumped to be doubling down on that over the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, is helping you guys cut through that clutter. New website designs based off of testing we're rolling out here shortly. Some really cool stuff.
Very cool. Well, I mean, it sounds like you've thought about a lot of the gaps. You've definitely thought about where the market's headed, kind of the expansion, contraction that occurs. And then ultimately, trying to create a all-in-one system that kind of services the real estate world in kind of a way that's much simpler and hopefully helps cut through the clutter and just overall business management. That's kind of what I'm getting from you here is there's just more tools that you're looking to provide investors moving forward.
Yeah, and make it so you don't have to go over here to get a phone call tracking number, and then you have to look at your data there. And over here, you're doing your Facebook lead ads, and those leads go here. It's like, it should all be in the thing that tracks your marketing. You know where all of your leads came from, but then also you can kick off your content marketing plans from inside the same system.
Which I think is a great idea. Look forward to seeing that kind of come to fruition. So I know I got a couple more minutes here. So before I cut you loose, for those people that have enjoyed this and just want to learn more about Carrot or maybe give CarrotCast a listen, what's the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, man. So the best way is to go to oncarrot.com, oncarrot.com, and check out our blog. We have a lot of free content over there. You can go to carrotcast.com, then it'll redirect to a part on our website which has the archive there, or find it on iTunes. I know, just like with you, like the CarrotCast is honestly where I just like pour out the things that are in my brain as an entrepreneur, and then we bring a lot of clients onto and just figure out their stories, how they're succeeding, break apart their strategy. So that's kind of my labor of love, and I really enjoy it. So go to carrotcast.com or find it on iTunes.
Very cool. Well, hey, I appreciate you getting on here and talking entrepreneurship and also diving in a little bit everything you've got going on with Carrot. So appreciate your time and appreciate you taking the time to be on our show.
Tucker, man, likewise. And I want to toss this out to everyone listen to you too, is that first of all, like one of the big things you're growing a business, it doesn't matter if you're just getting started or if you're established, is the people that you align with. And I can tell you guys that following Tucker is a really great decision. So keep on listening to his podcast and see what he's doing in his business, because he's a real deal. He's actually doing it and at a really high level. And also, I want to throw some love out to you, man, that it's a similar decision I had when we started our podcast. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to make money with this thing, but I don't care. I just want to do it because it gives me energy, and I think I have something to give. And if it helps to shift one person or change some people's lives, then awesome. That's amazing. So I want to give kudos to you for taking time out of your schedule, out of your business, away from your family, to hop on and do this podcast. It's probably not within the top 3% of ways you make money in your business, but it gives you a lot of energy. And thank you very much for putting that energy out there.
I appreciate it. This will be episode 216 and 4+ years in. So it's been a labor of love, but also one that's given back in a lot of ways. So happy to do it.
I love it, man. Sweet. Thank you.
Thanks again. Appreciate having you. Right. What did you guys think of that interview with Mr. Trevor Mauch? Pretty cool, huh? We talked about a lot of stuff, but we focused in more on life and just kind of the entrepreneurial roller coaster, because a lot of us, or most of you that are listening to the show, and myself included, we're entrepreneurs first most of the time, and we're real estate investors second. So there's a lot of wisdom. There's a lot of things that you can learn from the conversation that I had with Trevor, and just it's kind of one of those conversations that it makes you think about things. It makes you put things in perspective, and hopefully by doing that, you can run a better business that serves you more moving forward. So hopefully you guys dug that interview. I know that I really enjoyed hosting him here on the show. Now, before I leave you, what I want to leave you with, of course, is a closing success quote, as I always do. And this week's quote is by an individual by the name of Peter Drucker, which many of you have probably heard of. And the quote is, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." I like that quote. Hopefully you guys do too. All right, folks, this is episode 216. I'm your host, as always, Tucker Merrihew, signing off. See you all next week.
With a nigga like me, D to the M to the X. Last I heard, that niggas was having sex with the same sex. I show no love to homo thugs. Empty out, reload, and throw more slugs. How you gonna explain fucking a man? Even if we squash the beef, I ain't touching your hand. I don't fuck with chumps, but throw that in the jail. That tap with the Kool-Aid on his lips and bumps. I don't fuck with niggas that think they bros. Only know how to be one way, that's the dog. I know how to get down, know how to bite. Bark very little, but I know how to fight. Know how to chase a cat up in a tree. Man, I get y'all niggas the business for fucking with me. Is you crazy? With the hood, with the hood, with the hood at. And that nigga in the cut with the wood at. All the niggas acting up with the wolves at. You better bust that if you gon' pull that. With the hood, with the hood, with the hood at. And that nigga in the cut with the wood at. All the niggas acting up with the wolves at. You better bust that if you gon' pull that. One song come through, guns storm. Lungs of storm, sons of Mars, from dusk to dawn. Nighttime belongs to the dog. On the street past midnight, look for him in the mall. I don't play with these cats, I get in the set of these cats. All the moments that really do love them, please pray for these cats. Cause I know niggas is hard-headed, but I ain't got the patience. Don't want me having a patience, turning to more patience. One trip to ICU, cause ICU trying to get away with shit a real nigga wouldn't do. Where my dogs at? Right here. See them niggas? Yeah. See them boys? That's how we do. Yeah. This is for my dog. This is for my dog. Yo, where we at, baby? Tripping through the fall. From then till now, don't ask me how. Gonna roll like the me to the A-block on the trial. With the hood, with the hood, with the hood. told you to keep these fucking bombs out my face. Looking at you in your grill, it might be nice to cut. But I'll split your asses too, you just be twice your butt. Yeah, you right, I know your style pussy cause you fucking it. Since we all here, you hold my dick while he's sucking it, motherfucker. Don't you quit, you never come near me. Shove your head up your ass, have you seen shit clearly? You never heard the DB running, his DB gunning. I beat my dick and bust up in your eye, you can see me coming. Empty clips and shells are what I leave behind. And if they hit me with the joint, they hit